When I first started tracking calories, I saw it as purely a numbers game. I thought, hit your calories and your protein and job was done. But I didn't realise that there was more to it than that. Why some days I could feel absolutely fine, and then others I'd be sat there staring into my bowl thinking, why am I still hungry? And it's because no one had really walked me through the fact that what you're filling your calories with is just as important as the calories themselves. And ultimately that's food volume for you, because once I understood that, fat loss became way more manageable. And today I'll break down exactly what that is, why it's helpful, and how I use it myself. My name's Charlie. I'm a former dentist and now a precision nutrition certified nutrition coach, as well as a PT. And I lost 15 kilos myself. And the thing that made that sustainable and, dare I say, easy was learning to appreciate the importance of food volume. Understanding what food choices gave me more for the numbers is what made fat loss way more sustainable and less miserable. And if you want a simple framework for building plates that fill you up, check out the link below, because I made one for you and it takes seconds to get, and it's what I use for every one of my meals, whether I've tracked them or not. So the key with food volume is it's about energy density for the amount of food that you're getting. So something with lower energy density is going to give you more food for the calories that you're consuming. And that's important because in your stomach, your body has stretch receptors. And so the more food you've eaten, the more full you're going to feel, which is exactly why you can have two meals that look totally different, but they're exactly the same calories. One's going to leave you feeling much fuller, there's more food on that plate, and the other one's much more energy dense. And that has psychological benefits during a fat loss phase, right? Because when you're in a deficit, you're going to want to try and avoid hunger as best as you can, even though some is going to be an inevitability. But this is the reason that people tend to schlep through their fat loss phases, because they feel like they're hitting their numbers, but they're not satiated by their meals. And food volume is an easy way to, dare I say, hack that. So the big rocks are protein and fiber, because they'll delay your stomach emptying. And when your stomach empties more slowly, you're going to be left feeling fuller for longer. Fiber also pulls water into the gut, which again slows digestion and leaves you feeling full. On top of that, it takes your body longer to absorb whole foods than it does more processed foods. So again, you just end up with more food sitting in your gut, activating those stretch receptors and leaving you feel a bit more satiated. So something I noticed when I was prepping lunches during my own fat loss phase was the difference between different types of grain and carb source, for example. I like to experiment with different grains, and I found that quinoa would give me like a bigger portion than something like pearl barley. And sort of mentally I'd look at that on the plate and think, oh, I'm going to feel fuller with the quinoa. And so that became my preferred option. Unrelated to food volume, but a side note on that is I also utilized the psychological trick of having like smaller bowls and using smaller cutlery. One, because your portions look bigger, but two, with smaller cutlery, you physically have to take like smaller mouthfuls, and so you're taking longer to eat, and therefore it's a little bit more mindful, and it's giving your body more time to register what you're eating, which again can help with hunger management. And none of these are really like hacks or tricks, but I think they're important because they draw your awareness to the fact that it is about more than just the numbers, and calories alone are like half the picture. So for me in practice, it's pretty simple. I build out half my plate with non-starchy veggies because they're low energy density and really high volume. So that could be all sorts, peppers, onions, courgettes, aubergines, green beans. Literally, the choices are endless. And then on top of that, I'll layer my protein, and that'll take up probably a quarter of the plate. After that, you're then sort of making up the rest with the carbs and the fats. And as I've said already, carb choice for me would largely come down to my preference, which tends to come down to the volume. And my last consideration really is the fats, because they're the most energy dense, and the margins tend to be a bit smaller when you're in a deficit. And the other benefit here is that, generally speaking, these volume dense foods aren't just physically bigger, they're nutritionally denser. So you're getting more of the stuff that your body wants. You're getting more fiber, you're getting more vitamins, minerals, micronutrients, and all of that stuff's going to help stave off cravings as well. And because there's more than one type of hunger, you've got the physical hunger, which will respond to the stretch receptors, but you've also got hedonic hunger, which is more about sort of what's going on up here. That nutrient richness helps stave off both, because whilst you could eat loads and loads of sort of more processed, refined foods that will activate the stretch receptors, they're not going to give you those nutrients, and as a result you'll still want to keep eating more. Whereas when you're eating more whole foods and you're getting these nutrients and stuff in, it reduces those cravings, and as a result sort of dampens the hedonic side as well. So all in all, that's just going to leave you feeling satisfied for longer. So yeah, spelling that out more clearly, low volume eating is essentially eating predominantly processed foods that are going to be smaller in portions, that are going to leave you feeling less satisfied, probably with more hunger cravings, and wanting to eat sooner. And they're not morally bad, but it does make eating in a deficit that much harder. I have a personal anecdote on this one. My dad and I absolutely love McDonald's breakfasts, and we used to have them pretty frequently. And I remember about a few months into my fat loss phase, after I'd kind of had the epiphany when it comes to this food volume stuff, he and I were on one of our regular walks. We used to go on like long walks on a Sunday, and on the way back from this walk, we stopped into McDonald's. And because I'd been sort of pretty strict in my diet up until that point, I was absolutely buzzing for it. And we ordered the standard favourite, so mine was a double sausage and egg McMuffin, and I was like fully ready to go ham on this McMuffin, right? And it was good. Like once I started, it was good, but the sad realisation was it was over in about 4 bites, and it just did not touch the sides. And it was in that moment that I realised that McDonald's breakfast was just never going to hit the same again. Which had pros and cons, right? The sad fact being that I wasn't going to enjoy it as much anymore. But the upside of that was, whilst I didn't have to rule it out entirely or feel like I was restricting myself, I knew that decisions about not going there so much from now were going to be based on the fact that I'd rather have something that was going to fill me up, which is a much healthier place to be coming from. And I think it's important to learn about this stuff, right? Because it's not just a fat loss tool, it's a fundamental principle, and you can use it and leverage it whether you're tracking or not, regardless of the phase that you're in. But one thing I would say, once you're aware of this stuff and you want to start implementing it, is you don't have to overhaul everything at once. I'd probably start with the veggies, building out half your plate with veg as like the first point of call, because that one act alone is going to force out a load of shit that would have been on your plate otherwise, and you'll reap the benefits from that moving forward. So if you want to see this applied day to day, real meals, plates, eating on the fly, social meals, that sort of stuff, you can find that all over on my Instagram. Just give it a follow, @CharliesFoodAndFitness. And yeah, if you found this stuff useful, hit subscribe, because I'm planning to send more of it your way. And the plate framework is still linked below if you want an easy way to apply everything that I've talked about in this video.